Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ad Project Podcast. As always, I had to change that again, not saying as always, but I am your host, Joe Schellerud, joined by my co-host, Maria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Joe.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Feeling a little bit off this morning, but we're going to get in the groove.
Drink your coffee.
Drink my coffee. Yeah.
Just chug it.
Big coffee drinker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about Prime Day 2025.
Prime Day.
And last week, I know Isaac and Tony were sitting in these seats, and they're kind of like our hands-on keyboard experts. So they walked through some very specific strategic highlights of, how to look at this 4-day Prime Day and steps to take, particularly using Amazon Marketing Cloud. So listen to that episode for some very specific tips. We're going to talk about what 4 days of Prime Day means.
Yeah, this is new.
This is new. They doubled Prime Day, and we also don't know the exact dates yet. So there's a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
Joe, you did a poll recently on LinkedIn asking, what do people think? Is it going to be that second full week of July? Will it be that third week, Monday through Thursday, Tuesday through Friday? And it looked like the majority of people were that first week.
Yeah.
Which seems early to me.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Could be. I don't know. It's probably going to be one of those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
By the time you're listening to this, maybe you know already. So you'll know if we're right or wrong.
If it is July 8th
Yeah.
to the 11th, which I feel like most people are speculating,
Yeah.
I would anticipate a announcement very soon, because usually Amazon does it 3 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
So maybe we know by now.
Maybe we know. Yeah. And I think it's kind of fun too to just Prime Day it's a new thing. The context of why we have Prime Day to start with. Usually over summer months is the quietest period for retail. And so Amazon saw this and said, okay, we're going to pick kind of the quietest time outside of holidays. We're not going to go over 4th of July or something. But let's create this shopping event and really promote it during some of these really slow periods. And so it's kind of funny how you can just generate this big retail shopping period out of one of the slowest times of the year.
Artificially.
Artificially. Yep. Yeah. And the way that they do that is just by driving deals. And, that's the key driver for Prime Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's taking buyers outside of their typical shopping patterns. Usually in summer, we're not buying as much other than the necessities. It goes down over that period. So now to have this shopping event, people are looking for deals because that's kind of the big driver to come in, but we see overall traffic spike. It's not just deals. It's not just the unessential items. We can talk through more performance coming up, but yeah, it's kind of fun to see how they just took this dead time within the retail calendar and made it now something that we can talk about as a major shopping event.
Kind of that sweet spot between 4th of July and back to school, traditional back to school, though I think Prime Day and these other shopping events from other retailers that are around that same time have kind of pushed up the back to school shopping because there are deals.
Yeah. And then it's so funny in the retail space because then you get into August and we're already all in on Q4 plan.
Yeah. Halloween stuff is out.
So yeah, being in the retail world, it's a funny world.
Yeah. So Prime Day is 4 days this year.
4 days. Yeah. So usually it was 2.
2. Yeah. And I think last year, 2024 was the most successful Prime Day. I mean, essentially every year it steps up.
Yeah.
So now they've doubled it. And every year we do an analysis. We look at just overall performance metrics, traffic, conversion rate, things like that, which we do see go up. But we also do an analysis that looks at deals versus no deal.
Mm-hmm.
So whether brands choose to run promotions or not, you do see an impact. So brands running deals saw a greater lift last year, and we essentially see that annually.
Yep.
Deals do make an impact, absolutely. And also looking at conversion rate last year, when we looked at our aggregate clients, anybody who's running a deal saw an increase in conversion rate.
Yeah.
And of course, the brands that did not run deals, it was hit or miss. So
Yep. Yeah. And just as a reminder too of conversion rate, somebody clicks on your ad and then they purchase. That's the percent that they purchase after that. Yeah. And that's as expected with the deals or no deals. It's kind of fun to see where, people are going to Prime Day to try to find these deals. But again, it brings more people to the site and then I'm completing other purchases, even if I don't see that deal
right,
as I go.
right. Hopefully they're looking for deals, but then they're like, oh, I also need cat food and, supply other things that they may not have deals on. So
Yeah. Yeah. So now going to 4 days. So we've had some internal conversations around what we anticipate, and there's different ways that we could see this go. Um, so one would be like a really front end loaded sales spike. So first day, major one, and then we start to see this tail off after. There's another model which could be more of an even distribution. So people are coming back day after day and looking for the deals. And then kind of the third scenario is this like bookend scenario where the front end is really weighted high. But then everybody waits kind of till the end to see if any other of their other products that they want to buy go on sale. And if not, last day they purchase. I guess where do you fall? What do you think this is going to look like?
I think, all those scenarios, I think the biggest variable is the consumer behavior. And I don't know, like outside our industry, do people know that Prime Day is 4 days?
Sure.
Like, are they going to know that they have 4 days to look for deals? So I think I am leaning more towards the front load, the first case scenario where you see a strong day one and then it kind of trails off. I think historically, day one typically sees a little more traffic, just with the 2 days, and I see that just kind of extended.
Damn.
Where do you fall?
I personally fall in the same camp, and I think there's a couple different reasons. Like one, being in the space, we always assume that consumers have more education or understand these deal days than they actually do. There's just so many things going on. Like, I talked to some of my family and they're like, "Oh, it's Prime Day." Like they don't even know it's Prime Day. And so I feel like, it's called Prime Day. So just breaking across that too, like it's actually Prime Days.
Yeah, I've always kind of been confused by that.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think we're going to see a major spike day one. I think it's going to taper off. People may keep going back. Like Amazon's going to do a good job of promoting the event and everything. But I don't think that consumers would also know that the deals can change day by day.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just view this as one event and everything goes on sale throughout the event and then it's done. Some may understand that there's different deals that come in throughout, and I'm sure Amazon will do a good job of trying to promote that too.
Yeah.
But just trying to change general consumer shopping behavior, it's definitely a long-term play. If you look at like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, like they have different days. And so it's different key milestones throughout all those. And so I'm always coming back, or like, I don't know, now they're starting to go through like the 11, turkey 11,
Yeah,
turkey 12,
I think
turkey 30, like whatever it is now. And so like every day it's like, okay, I'm going to go back. But when I think of Prime Day, I don't know. I just don't see it as being as much where it's like people are coming back day after day. There's still going to be elevated traffic throughout, but I highly lean towards there's going to be this peak on day one.
Mm-hmm.
And then day two is going to be strong, but it's going to taper off. 3 and 4 are going to taper off further. Still be much more elevated than typical shopping around it. But that's my bet. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I agree. I do think we had some very good conversation internally when we talked about this in an ops meeting recently, where we talked about Black Friday and Cyber Monday and how typically we see higher traffic, better performance on Cyber Monday, but you really can't compare Prime Day and the Turkey 11 or whatever, because
Sure.
you have different names, like you mentioned, and there's just this like historical understanding for consumers. There are these specific days. They have years of having that kind of ingrained in them.
Sure.
Where Cyber Monday, that's kind of the final day.
Yep.
So I think this is kind of a whole new ball game, this extension, and I don't think consumers will catch on quite yet.
Yeah. Another interesting piece is just kind of taken back to like the foundation of Prime Day. Like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they all came from shopping for holiday gifts.
Mhm.
And so that was the driver, and then this was kind of the key milestone for that. So it came from like a shopping need, and that drives different consumer behaviors. For Prime Day, you don't have like a holiday coming up or anything else like that. Again, this is just like a manufactured retail holiday to drive sales. And so, yeah, I think comparing the two is very different just because of the key drivers on why people are buying products. And, being in summer vacation feels very different than in, going into winter and in the school season and everything else like that too. So, yeah, definitely don't feel like you can compare them. There are similarities in what we see in terms of general metrics. Like we see traffic really step up. Deals tend to perform a lot better than not having a deal, but overall conversion rate, it stays at least flat for non-deal items, but can jump up quite a bit for deal items. And so there's a lot of similarities, even though what's going to do well in the different scenarios is going to be different.
Yeah. I also always wonder why Amazon picks Tuesday, Wednesday. For the past several years, Prime Day has been on Tuesday, Wednesday. And I've always wondered why they don't do Monday, Tuesday, which, if you look at aggregate data, those are usually the highest traffic days throughout the year.
Sure.
And the highest converting days already. But I guess if they're trying to generate more traffic, that's something that I've always just been curious about. Which
honestly, never really thought about that. Yeah.
So,
I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's also important to note that Amazon's is also competing for traffic with other retailers because it's not just Prime Day now. It's Walmart typically has an event, and nobody's announced anything yet that I've seen as of this recording. But Walmart usually has Walmart Plus type day week. Target, Circle Week, Best Buy typically has an event, Petco, Chewy, all the big retailers have kind of jumped in on this shopping event in July. And looking back, Walmart, their deal days last year were July 8th through 11th. And so they kind of jumped ahead of Amazon Prime Day.
Sure.
So I do kind of wonder if maybe that's why Amazon's going to go a little earlier this year.
Moving up, because and then Walmart's not going to want to jump into the 4th of July week.
Right, yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see, but it's important to know as an advertiser and a brand that shoppers are likely shopping around beyond Amazon for the best deal.
What do you think of with it going to a 4-day event? This is kind of how I feel about like Turkey 11 now too. Like, does it dilute the power of the day itself?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm sure that overall net impact goes up. With the elevated shopping that you see throughout those 4 days, I'm sure if you look at overall retail sales and everything, it's probably going to be higher.
Yeah.
But my urgency to go in and check out stuff goes way down.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, well, deals are still going to be
I have
there
some time.
Well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then it's also like, it might even be a little overwhelming to consumers too, that it's like, oh, there's deals on all of these sites and what days and where do I go? And, I think maybe it swung a little too far to to just an expansive amount of deals everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Prime Day.
Yeah.
Soon to be Prime Week.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they should look into a name change, especially if it's 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what's some key things, like as advertisers are looking into this, I know that Tony and Isaac went through a lot of details, but like high level, what's key items that people should be focused on?
I think budget pacing will probably be an important thing. I mean, that's always important to look at. Like, you don't want to run out of budget.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have more days to look at and plan. So I think budget pacing and just looking at that will probably be your number one priority.
Sure.
Which is the same, but Now you have 4 days to look at.
Yeah. And rule of thumb, traffic usually goes up, what was it, like 180, 190% first day at least. Yeah.
Yep. Usually we see that 2x increase.
Yeah. So as you're looking at budget and you're planning for it, so from an advertising perspective, I would at least let budgets float based off of traffic. So plan for 2x the budget. If make sure you're happy with performance going into it because you're going to spend twice as much over that period. But we're big believers on letting budget float and just be directed up, driven by the increase in traffic versus artificially like keeping budget down over those periods. Again, overall performance from advertising, even if you're not running deals, tends to stay at least constant, but you have this big wave of extra traffic coming in. And then if you are running a deal, then conversion rates and performance tends to increase quite a bit.
Yep. And in terms of bids, I mean, conversion rate doesn't always like help even out an increase in bid.
Sure.
So, I mean, make sure you have your modifier set for top of search and like the placements you want, but like increasing bids quite a bit might not pay off.
Yeah.
With the increase in CPCs.
Well, yeah. And I think that's a big driver there. Yep. And so, yeah, if you increase bids, your cost per click can go up over these different events because other people may inflate their bids to try to get more traction during these big events. So increase CPCs, even if your conversion rate does go up, if we do all the math and your return on ads and everything else like that, may not offset it. So typically, if we're not running any big promotions, we're not making major moves to our bids. We're making sure that our budget can handle that. And then as you get into the day, just note that you're not going to get real-time feedback on advertising performance. So the key thing is making sure that you're set up well going into these events. I feel solid on where I'm at. I've got a good strategy. I've got good anticipation on what traffic's going to do, what conversion rate's going to do. And then, yes, you can fine tune some items based off of how different products are selling. But in terms of like advertising performance or return on ads or anything else like on that, by the time you get the data, it's going to be delayed enough where you're not going to be able to make substantial moves during the event itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at ACOS and ROAS day of won't have a huge impact.
Yeah. And you don't want to make moves based off of that just because the data is not going to be, it's not going to be fully reported, attributed, all that good stuff. And so, yeah, we always want to avoid any knee-jerk moves, especially when we're having the high traffic come in. Yeah. So I guess anything from like a deal standpoint that people should be thinking through or, inventory prioritization.
Visibility. And, based on our analysis, they also boost conversion rate. I think, too, like what Amazon has changed in past Prime Days is, they have like specific Prime Day deal search. So, you might have people who are coming to Amazon.com or the app and they're only searching for deals. So that's definitely like a positive for those running deals as well. But you're going to come up in those searches.
Sure.
So, yeah, but you get the visibility and from what we've seen in the past, the boost in conversion rate. So it does have an impact.
Yeah. It's obviously doing the math on margins and if I reduce my product or my price and what your inventory levels look like and now factor in tariffs and everything else. And so there's a lot of key decisions. And for the most part, those decisions on deals have already been made. So now for the ad strategy, it's just pushing if you do run deals, making sure you've got a good budget set. And for those that aren't, just making sure you have a solid strategy going into it.
Yep.
And then other items like Tony and Isaac went through in detail, so I'm not going to cover that much, but just the full tentpole strategy, how we can generate awareness ahead of any of these major events. And then during the event, really driving to the purchase. And then after the event, that's where you can really make a lot of cash extra from all the efforts that you put in. Just from targeting people who previously added to cart or view-based targeting. There's so many different ways to take advantage of the traffic and the interest that you generated over these events, even if you didn't generate the sale. And then if you're in the sweet spot where you're a consumable product and you got that initial purchase, now it's all about maximizing lifetime value and trying to increase that brand loyalty, driving those extra purchases. Again, that's where that's where a lot of the profits are made for those products. So these events don't just look at the event itself.
Right.
There's a ton of strategy that goes in before, but I'd say even more after. That's where you can get a huge benefit from it.
Yeah, we're talking about how Prime Days extended from 2 to 4 days, but it's never just been 2 days, because a shopping event is never just the shopping event. It's from the advertising perspective and the logistics planning perspective. It's the lead in to the event and then capitalizing on all of those eyeballs that you captured leading in and day of.
Yeah. So I think key thing, as you're looking at setting different budgets, make sure that you've got a good plan. I plan on 2x the amount of budget from a typical day. So yep, go with it there. Make sure you're set up well. If you are limited on budget, I'd make sure that you've got it set up well for the full 4 days. And my money would go on to highest traffic day 1, and then it starts to taper after. It'll be interesting. The one other one I could see is like day 4 spike a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Like the bookend.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be highest day 1, day 2, and then maybe 3, maybe it inches up a little bit on 4, but yeah.
We'll see. Fridays are typically low traffic, but
they are.
You never know.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, once you have a good game plan, then it's just watching the sales roll in during the event.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we'll see when everybody announces all these different deal days. That's going to shift our strategy a bit too. If Walmart's is the same time as Amazon's, or if they're staggered, which they tend to be, how all these deal days fall, it could impact traffic, if people are pulled in different directions too.
And then how much consumers know too is another variable.
A very big variable. Yep. It's always fun to just ask people who are outside of the space, what they know, or are they planning on shopping, or I don't know. I always find that super interesting.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, wow, we are really ingrained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Prime Day 2025.
We'll learn soon when it actually is.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, as always, we appreciate you joining this episode of the Ad Project. Make sure you follow us. Check us out. Yep. If you like the audio version,
subscribe to our YouTube.
Yeah.
Be sure to go back and check Isaac and Tony's really thorough walkthrough of use cases, especially with AMC for Prime Day. So that will give you a lot of good takeaways.
Yeah. So as always, we appreciate you listening. We'll see you on the next episode of the Ad Project Podcast.